I'll
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back. We're going to do Ken Shoulders number 14 today. And thank you, Mary. Mary's going to read for us today. So I'll let you guys do your thing.
Great. Scientific or Technical Belief by Ken Shoulders, 2007. Goethe said, "You only see what you know. This is a most important apparent truth in scientific and technical frontier work where an explorer does not have the time to acquire the backing of others with which to build a validated belief by waiting for a consensus. Under these conditions, he can easily look straight at a true finding and not recognize it. Lacking this human fortification in belief, acceptance, actuality, or validity of a new finding, the explorer is left to his own means and devices to remove doubt, build certainty and assurance for whatever is found. This isolation most often requires a long period of silence and resistance to normally accepted social customs before an acceptable communication path to others is established. In the present author's extended experience on the scientific frontier, many such examples have occurred. One of these is noted here. The EVO is an enigma defying presently accepted rules of science. Discussions on some of these deviations can be found at http://svn.net/KRS-CFS. Many times over, the author has encountered the Goethe effect of only seeing what he already knows. Over the years, internal processes have been worked out whereby less and less is missed by this flaw in the author's own behavior. Yet in the intervening years, I've also become acutely aware of the near impossibility of communicating truly new technical findings to many. It is as if the Goethe effect has a secondary equivalent existing between individuals, which renders recognition of many newly found technical statements virtually transparent to the intended recipient. To make matters worse, the more the receptor is supposed to know about a particular sector of science, the less they seem able to accept new concepts within or near that arena. To wit, when a trained physicist is told that an EVO has a measured variable charge and mass, there's almost a complete cutoff of communication, as if a defense mechanism of the older, more familiar philosophy comes into play. This is a dangerously negative effect in greatly diminishing human capability. This disconnection, is often not the case with others who have less training, as they can take the tenuous thought and proceed to devise a new energy effects and propulsive devices based on this new information. I have witnessed these untrained people mentally conjure up new energy sources from just knowing that a mass modulation effect produces a form of self-propulsion of electrons that is at the root of all EVO energy production methods. This Goethe secondary level of incongruity often exists in conveying an alien technical thought to a friendly, well-trained technicians, in that they can continue with the conversation as if nothing outrageous or extreme was said, but they do not retain enough of the basic data to recall the gist of the message at a later date. They certainly cannot compose the new data into a working device having utility. They seem to hear and be able to converse, but nothing of value is retained. This is only true of the overtrained that dwell outside of the new conceptual arena, having a wall of tranquility surrounding it, preventing penetration of thought. Seeing the effects stated here over and over has caused the author to virtually cut off communication with those who are supposed to be in the know. However, there is one method of contact recently tried that has shown enough value to renew hope for some connection to controversial physics. I have named it the convince me method, whereby the onus of proof is put on the recipient of the information, in which they must convince me of the validity of the new effect being discussed. If that does not happen easily, the line of contact deserves breaking, because the standard method of lecturing in an entirely new subject to a staid audience certainly does not work. Using this convince me method of engendering belief in a new technology is a beginning toward the end of overcoming a small part of the secondary Goethe effect. That's interesting.
Yeah.
By the way, it's pronounced Goethe.
Sorry. Say it again.
Goethe.
Goethe. Got it. You want me to keep reading? Okay. Sorry. Shielding from the Inevitables by Ken Shoulders, 2006. I can imagine nothing so inevitable as the use of EVO-type projectile guns as described by the author in Electric Gun Effects. These are closely tied to the development of EVO-based energy sources, and there's nothing more ubiquitous, than EVOs in the future energy and propulsion systems. The author in the paper entitled EVOs and Hutchinson Effect, published in the beginning of this trace and made the data available on the web for download at website. The basic statement made is that by the time exotic electrical energy generation capability is developed, so will electric guns be available. However, anyone contemplating being in this new form of gun business would also be well advised to go into the shielding business very quickly. The broadcast system made in the above mentioned notes is that EVOs are the basis for energy production and transformation in all forms of cold fusion, plasma-focused machines, the Hutchinson effect, Adamanco, nuclear transmutation work, as well as direct EVO energy production and nuclear transmutation. This statement has largely gone unheeded, but is likely to come to the forefront with the advent of commercial development of any development of any of these energy sources, because along with that development comes the availability of EVO projectile guns, as they are virtually the same device. If anything differentiates the two, it is that the guns are easier to make and distribute. The ubiquitous, darn it, I'm sorry, of the use of these electric guns demand effective shielding of an entire new type that is hardly describable at this point, but still worth the attempt being made here. Consideration will be given in this note to developing a defensive shielding technique against bombardment by electrical projectiles or EVOs. A quick reference was made to the shielding method to be discussed here in an earlier paper by the author entitled EVO Life Cycle. This note will continue through the imagined requirements and limitations in more detail as seen from the present perspective, but still having an indistinct view of the problem and potential solutions. The solution proposed utilizes a basically invisible static array of condensed electrons acting as a shield capable of becoming quickly excited to a very high level of agitation by an entering EVO projectile that is in turn excited by the shield. This highly agitated state is then supposed to eradicate the projectile in some still unspecified way. It should be clear to the reader that the proposed method is both problematical in its solution and complicated to implement. Yet it is another example of how easy it is to destroy order and how hard it is to either create or maintain it, especially biological order under attack by a very energetic projectile. Still, having surmounted this formidable hurdle, humans can move on into other regions of increased energy and activity with a new degree of immunity. This shield is the skin of skins, allowing us to slice through entirely new realms of adversity. Ordinary material as used as a shield is not self-activating enough to do anything but slightly hasten the ultimate decomposition of an EVO projectile. Under this condition, some settings of the projector can always be found to penetrate ordinary shielding and to do great harm to the enclosed object. Using an artificial substance in the form of a condensed electron array provides an active energy level for up to 10 to the 17th watts per centimeter squared to resist incoming attack. How this high energy density is released is a major problem to consider. In principle, all energy released is directed away from the shielded object in successful design. In undertaking such a design, it is instructive to note the similarity to conventional electromagnetic shielding, where an interacting wave to be shielded excites electron motion within the shield, which in turn generates a countering field directed away from the arriving one. When one thinks about this process in detail, it appears to be somewhat magical, but apropos to the present requirements. We need a particle shield that is equivalent to the electromagnetic shield in action, whereby a countering action within the shield repulses the projectile forward motion. As a digression, there is often an allusion made to the action of the vector potential. A acting as a longitudinal wave that does not excite lattice electrons and hence not subject to the shielding. There is scant evidence of measurement of this effect, but it is worth pondering the equivalence to a projectile manipulation, as EVOs are capable of some manipulations within the realm of the effects of potentials in field-free regions that cannot be produced otherwise, as discussed in permittivity transitions. Unfortunately, the energy density limitations of conventional material do not allow effective repulsion to such an object as an EVO projectile. A new shielding material having much higher energy density is called for that acts as an active and controllable propellant in an outward direction instead of the passive action of normal matter. Once again, we find the propulsion aspect of EVO technology to be the key to success in shielding as well as energy generation. As stated in the earlier writing, EVO life cycle, there's a lower velocity cutoff below which the shielding action is ineffective due to the inability of the projectile to excite the shield. As far as it is known, a high velocity EVO penetration is necessary to excite the array of condensed electrons. There will probably be found a matched excitation rate for maximum engagement between the EVO projectile and the shields in a corresponding fashion to load generator matching in most electrical systems. Velocities either above or below this maximum coupling point would not optimally excite the shielding array for maximum projectile rejection. Anyone exploring this effect should look for indications of non-linearity and hope to optimize it for maximum rejection. Likewise, an unidirectional sensitivity is needed to induce projectile rejection along the reverse path it is entered. As an indicator, a minimal form of this directional action is often seen in EVO boring examples through such observations are easily set aside by thoughts of inertia being responsible. I do not agree with this naive interpretation of many examples of extremely sudden turns can be seen in propulsion by zero-point quantum pressure that defy normal inertia rules. A form of highly sensitive directional propulsion is needed to explain what is seen. That is the propulsive force needed here to repulse the intruding projectiles, and it stems from the very EVO technology causing the trouble in the first place. This is the arena in which to look for salvation. In another previous writing by the author, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it was bemoaned that it was difficult to grasp a collection of condensed electrons or find a handle to affix to. That is still a problem remaining unsolved that must eventually be overcome before a shield can be carried along with us. Many problems arise in the area of who or what does the shield belong to or associate with. It would be sad to see the shield join the projectile in an attack against who or what it was supposed to be shielding. As nearly anyone can plainly see, this is really new stuff that has a long way to go before it can be used. Still, any advances along the lines indicated will not only provide the inevitable shielding needed, but will also open innumerable doors to better things. It is a big step to take, but one that is required if we intend to sustain our form.
Okay, I think
Wow.
that's it.
No.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Sure.
There's a lot there. Ken Shoulders is basically talking about, it almost sounds like a Tesla shield to counteract the incoming EVOs, which is very, very interesting. And I agree that we have to figure out ways to shield this stuff to make it safe, essentially. And somebody really needs to look into that research. Definitely.
So, just for science fiction, we heard the same thing with the shielding on the Enterprise every time the Borg attacked them, right? Rotating the frequencies.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I think that this active method of canceling out, because that's essentially what he's talking about here, is an active method of canceling out these EVOs. So the shield has to sense the incoming EVO and counteract its velocity, basically, right? Pretty interesting. This might be a good question for Chris Beskar, actually, to see what he thinks about all of this, because this was written like about 20 years ago, essentially, right? So we might have come a long ways in knowing the technology a little bit better.
It seemed like he was definitely answering questions and concerns about, EVO projectiles in general and being used as a weapon.
Yep.
And so he said he's proposing some ideas how to produce a shield. It's a highly polarizing EVO field would neutralize pretty much anything thrown into it.
Yeah.
So it's a real-time active shielding technique. And there are, U.S. military has active shielding of certain pieces of equipment, tanks and whatnot. You don't hear much about it. It's very protected information, but
Yeah.
um,
And I think
same concept.
I think maybe some of it might work along with the stealth that they've actually got as well too.
Yeah.
I know that there's active ways of canceling out waves, essentially radar waves, right? Because basically that's what they are. And there are ways of doing that, because Chris has talked about that a few times. So very, very interesting. But I think that they're right. If we want to work with these technologies in the future, and we have to, we need to really understand them and be able to make sure that we're all safe doing it. Definitely. Does anyone else have any comments or questions or anything? And if not, maybe we can stop the recording, Brendan.
Yo, okay.